So last year I was sitting in a workshop at my conference in Fort Worth, and it was a workshop on technology and worship. And because of our sort of new gadgets and our wanting to kind of see what we can actually do with some of these new gadgets, and yet our desire to somewhat feel traditional in worship, I thought that this might be a good workshop for me to attend. And it was taught by this youngish, newish minister who was a new church start guy in West Fort Worth. And he started his workshop off by talking about the 7 deadly sins. Now you remember the 7 deadly sins, don't you? I mean, it's no sloth, no lust, no greed. But yes, we can go on. But rather than focusing on those things, he focused on what he called the 21st century 7 deadly sins. Things like being unproductive, or obese, or inefficient. He said that in the ancient church, sins were tied to morality, and they were all considered moral objections. And nothing was more deadly to your soul. Nothing was going to send you to hell faster than if you broke one of the 7 deadly sins: greed, murder, sloth, gluttony. And yet, here he was talking about the 21st century. Instead of taking morality as the basis for those 7 deadly sins, he was saying in the 21st century, we actually use more of an economic spin on them. If you are inefficient, if you are unproductive, if you aren't up with the technological times, then you are a sinner. Which is ridiculous, right? It's so ridiculous to think that way. And he wasn't advocating for that. He saw the ridiculousness in that as well. And he thought that this was an opportunity where the church could kind of push back on the culture a little bit and set things, quote unquote, right again. And so it was while I was sitting in that workshop and hearing about how people who were unproductive and slow and not up with the technological times and inefficient were sinners that I thought, those people aren't sinners. They're blessed. Blessed are the slow and the inefficient. I really like what Jesus had to say in our portion of our sacred story this morning in the Gospel of Luke. Because there's a lot of different Jesuses in the Gospels. I mean, you get little baby Jesus, and you get miracle worker Jesus, you get teacher Jesus, you get angry Jesus, you get sacrifice Jesus, but today I truly believe that we get hippie Jesus. He's walking, he's talking on the road, but doesn't it just kind of feel like he's not really power walking, he's more just kind of moseying. He's kind of just shuffling along, and he's taking the long way, and he finds himself in the middle of a field, and he might have a destination in mind, but it's more about the journey than the destination. He'll get there when he gets there. And in this field, he looks around, and he sees the birds, and he sees the flowers, and he just starts throwing out wisdom, which is so dead on, that really just cuts to the heart of the matter. Don't fuss about your table or your mealtime or the clothes in your closet and whether or not they're in fashion. Walk into the fields, man. Look at the wildflowers, man. Slow it down. Don't fuss about your appearance. Look at the flowers and see how beautiful they are in their design and color. The 10 best dressed men and women in our country look shabby compared to them. So if God has attention for these wildflowers, how much more will God attend to you? Take pride in you. Come on, people now. What I'm trying to say here is relax, man. Don't be so preoccupied with what you're getting, but instead respond to how God is giving. Be generous. Give to the poor. Get yourself a bank that won't go bankrupt. A bank in heaven far away from bank robbers, or worse, embezzlers. A bank that you can bank on. It's obvious, isn't it? Right on, Jesus. And then I think in the background, like there's a Pharisee far off. I can just sort of hear him. Get a job, hippie. Relax. Don't be so preoccupied with what you're getting. Instead, be more occupied with what God is giving. Be generous to yourself. And in response to God's generous, be generous to others. That is a healthy prescription for heart and mind and body and spirit. Though most of us actually aren't allowed to sort of live out that prescription because, the man wants to keep us down. Or, more importantly, we won't allow ourselves because of some damn Protestant worth ethic mumbo jumbo that I don't know about you, but was force-fed to me since the time I was this tall. But I've come to own something about myself, which is I'm just not productive between the hours of 1 and 2:30 in the afternoon. In other cultures, that would be prime siesta time. But in American culture, it is just the start of the second half of your workday, and you better get to work. But since I'm not allowed to nap, I check a lot of Facebook. I'm awake. We mock siestas as if they are the luxury of other countries not as great or exceptional as the United States of America. Or we think of siestas so wistfully as that amazing thing that we were allowed to do when we were in kindergarten. But now that we're an adult worker and not a little worker in training, we can't participate in a siesta. But it's actually been proven. Study after study after study has shown that a 20 to 30 minute nap in the afternoon followed by a 20 to 30 minute relaxation time to wake back up is highly beneficial for our bodies and our minds and our souls. Study after study has shown that if you take a 20-minute nap and follow it with a 20-minute kind of stretching time, relaxation time, you are more respondent to stimuli, you have better elasticity with your body, and you will tell people that you are happier. And God forbid we be happy. If you are able to take a midday break and able to digest your food properly and not just in the 30 minutes that people are clocking you on to make sure that you eat and get back to your post, then your body and your mind and your spirit refresh. But instead of allowing Americans an hour of napping and refreshing our bodies and minds and spirits for the second half of the day, what do? Every other commercial on TV is about a 5-hour energy drink. And we push those things down people. Watch those commercials. It's about how much more productive and less inefficient you can be. You will be more productive, less lazy. You will make more, which means if you make more, you get more. And it's all driven by this economic mantra that if you are inefficient, and if you are slow, and if you aren't up with the technological times, then you have broken one of the most important commandments passed down by the almighty economy. Before 1850, there was no cases of cancer. And forensic doctors have gone back to medical records prior to 1850 and looked at those medical records, and they can't retroactively find a case of cancer. So what happened in the late 1700s and the early 1800s which would have brought cancer into our world? The Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution brought with it carcinogens that our body could not regulate, pollution that our air and our water could not naturally cleanse, and we've been fighting cancer ever since, and there's not a single one of you in this room today who hasn't, by your family or circle of friends, or maybe even yourself, have not been touched by cancer. And the irony of it is, we have done it to ourselves. You know, before 1978, there was no diagnosis of attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So you know where I'm going with this. What happened in the 60s and 70s that might account for this? The rise of television, the integration of computers into our society, the invention of the internet and the World Wide Web, smartphones and laptops and tablets, and Sesame Street. You laugh, but there's an amazing Harvard study in the mid-2000s which showed that Big Bird and Bert and Ernie not only taught us to respect diversity and how to count, but children who are exposed to the format of quick edits and hyperactivity movements and behavior are less able to concentrate longer periods of time. So I joke, but there's one kid with ADHD, two kids with ADHD. Thanks, Kermit. And the irony is, we've done it to ourselves. And yet, we don't take responsibility for these things. Instead, we shame a kid with ADHD. How many of you over the age of 35, which looking around the room, except for one person in this room, have ever said, back in my day, we didn't have ADHD? Well, pat yourself on the back because you've actually said something true. There wasn't ADHD when you were in school. So don't look down our noses at parents who have kids with ADHD. This is something that's brand new, and it's not a reflection on their bad parenting. And don't shame a kid who has ADHD or the fact that he might be on medication. And don't look at an adult who has adult ADHD and say that they're weird or not wired correctly. We're all trying to figure out what is happening with our bodies with this new technology that has come into our society. So right now we have 6.4 million women, men, and children who are diagnosed with ADHD. We have 1.7 million who are diagnosed with cancer. And I'm glad that it's that way because the reverse would be awful. Because cancer can kill you, whereas ADHD can't. At least not in the traditional way. Because we're just now starting to figure out what it means to have a society where everyone can't concentrate and focus, and yet all of us are behind the wheel of a one-ton pickup going hyper-fast speeds on the highway. Now, I am not one who likes to lift first-century ideals and just plant them in the 21st century. I mean, you can look at biblical standards of marriage, and they don't apply to 21st century California. And that's a good thing. We've progressed, and that's good. But sometimes the old ways are the best ways. And it's amazing how slowing down and focusing and concentrating on the generosity of God and our generosity to others can actually be wonderful treatments both for ADHD and cancer. Jesus was right. Slow down. Relax. Contemplate God. Focus on God's generosity and your generosity to others. These things are great prescriptions to increasing the endorphins in your body, which counteract the adrenaline in your body, which is what is the cause of ADHD. Meditating 10 minutes a day has shown in both children and adults that ADHD, you have improved attention, improved impulse control, improved problem-solving skills, improved organization, improved academic performance, and reduced stress, anxiety, and anger. And that last bullet point is so key for cancer patients. Reduce your stress and your anxiety and your anger. Furthermore, fast food has horrible effects on ADHD and people fighting cancer. Whereas the slow food movement has shown to have increased benefits on people with ADHD and cancer. So in some cases, People have treated successfully their cancer and their ADHD solely through slow food and meditation. Now, it doesn't work for everyone. I'm not saying I'm advocating it without consulting a medical professional first, and I am not one. But the evidence is compelling. So there are things that we want to be fast. We want our fire departments and the police departments and EMTs to respond quickly to our emergencies. This past 2 weeks, we've been celebrating the 30th anniversary of the internet. Thank God we don't have dial-up anymore. Do you remember that dial tone? I remember downloading the pictures from the first Mars rover. I'm still downloading those pictures on AOL. But there are things that we want to take slow and to focus on and to relax and to be generous about. Tom Goff is a beautiful writer of a book called Love Does. And he advocates looking at your calendar every single day and your list of responsibilities and agendas and errands, and off the top, taking one off. Anyone, just to create more time in our lives. Because blessed are the slow and the inefficient. For if no one ever stopped to smell the roses, or the lilies, or consider the birds in the fields and the air, then we might forget that they were there in the first place. And we'd never come to know the amazing benefits of stopping, relaxing, focusing, receiving God's generosity, and being generous to others. You are blessed, you slow and inefficient people. Amen. Amen.